Paul Joseph Watson has detailed reports on the latest Libya hoax that all of Gaddafi's sons have been captured and that Gaddafi would be captured within hours. They were saying that last night. The truth is, a bunch of al-Qaeda forces led by U.S. and NATO commanders landed now 2.5 days ago off the coast in a nighttime landing and engaged in a special forces destabilization, disinformation operation, basically blowing up buildings, setting fires, a classic operation. You see it fictionalized in something like Red Dawn, where disguised jumbo jets come in and the nose cones pop off, and special forces troops come out and seize control of the police stations and take control of the surrounding area. That only works in places where the population's disarmed or psychologically is weak and will lay down. And the fact that the American people aren't more upset over the fact that we're, quote, teamed up with al-Qaeda, who knows? They could have, I guess, al-Qaeda come here, and the American people would probably bow down to them if the government told them that they should. But the long and short of it is they need a beachhead inside Tripoli as a pretext to now recognize it as the official government of Libya, and then have the official government, the al-Qaeda operatives, put out the SOS and request foreign troops to occupy. That way they play this psychological game of, oh, if the foreign troops aren't occupying, we're asking you to come in. Oh, the United States was going to leave in 2004 and 2005 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 and 11. But every year the Iraqi puppet government says, no, stay longer. So see, we're not occupying. The puppet government says, oh, please stay. And so the al-Qaeda government, sniping men, women, and children, blowing up buildings, can now be given the government of Libya's seized assets and are calling for British Special Forces troops and other NATO troops, along with U.S. troops, to openly come into the city and finish off Gaddafi. And so that's where this is headed. Now, if the rebels can get it done, the establishment wants that because they know there's a good chance that once the Western troops are openly running around, which has already been happening, that it's going to have a lot of Libyans go ahead and decide to stand up for their country. But there's special forces, Western special forces led attack teams trying to take over the Gaddafi compound because that's where the gold's at. I mean, they at least want to get their hands on those goodies, wherever Gaddafi may be. Muammar Gaddafi, 40 years ago, staged a coup against a British government-backed puppet dictator that operated as a royal house, a monarchy. Before that, the fascists had been in there under Mussolini. They had the first use of nerve gas against populations. The Libyans are just constantly being overrun and taken over, and they fought back each time, and they're sick of it. And so Gaddafi kicks out the British-installed puppet monarchy 40 years ago. He is a dictator, but he's a popular dictator overall and actually does give most of the oil wealth to the population. The population explodes. Cities rise out of the desert. Gaddafi gets framed a lot for terrorism that Iran carries out. Gaddafi, clearly not a good guy at the end of the day, but compared to the globalist, he is not in line with their overall world program. 7 years ago, he signs deals with Europe and the U.S. to let the big banks and big insurance companies and oil companies come in again and privatize things. He starts handing the economy over to the bankers because he knew that they were ready to militarily come in and take him out. They tried to assassinate him a bunch using al-Qaeda. That came out in the BBC. So he said, okay, I'll just give you most of the country. Just let us keep some of the oil revenue for the population. And they said no. First, they let him think that he'd made a deal, and 7 years later, they launched al-Qaeda operations out of the East, admitted al-Qaeda, I have the LA Times here admitting it. The rebel leader admittedly brags that he helped kill Americans in Iraq and says, I still hate Americans. And so you've got to decide, are you for national sovereignty and Gaddafi, or are you for Al-Qaeda and NATO and the big mega banks, the same mega banks looting America, the same mega banks that threatened Congress 3 years ago with martial law if they wouldn't give them untold trillions, the same mega banks that threatened just a month ago Ireland and, of course, Greece with, quote, martial law tanks in the streets. I mean, they told the parliament in Greece, they said, you will do this or the president's just going to do it. There's going to be tanks in the streets. I mean, that was in Reuters. The bankers say there'll be tanks in the streets. And how would they do that? They'll just blow up a government building, say protesters did it, roll tanks out, and start arresting people. Real simple. Bankers come in, blow something up, run around posing as the saviors. The media they own will go with the official story with a straight face, hoax the public. That's how they do this. I mean, how do you think offshore corporations are going to take America over? They're going to play dirty tricks. They're going to pose as your savior. They're going to tell you they're protecting you from terrorism. They are the ones financing the terrorists. They are staging the terror attacks. They ran Al-Qaeda in Serbia. They ran them against the Russians. They're running them against Gaddafi. They're running them against Assad of Syria. This is just a miscreant Muslim brigade of mercenaries. That's all they are. After the U.S. and NATO took over Afghanistan in 2001, 2002, they flew 8,000 Taliban and Al-Qaeda commanders out to safety into Pakistan to start the next phase of destabilization. They just move them around. They want to take over your backyard, take over your town. They take their Al-Qaeda chess piece and they put it in your yard. They want to take your house, the cops plant cocaine in it. They want to take your country, they plant Al-Qaeda. Now, it's very simple. And all that happened here is they boated in at night several thousand Al-Qaeda with MI6 commanders, and they started blowing up high-rise buildings, rocket attacking police stations, attacking apartment buildings to create fear in the general public. Now, this is a special forces tactic. The Russians admittedly had a plan for this. The United States had a plan with the NATO stay-behind networks known as Gladio. And what you do is you have special forces that are either inserted or deep cover operatives, and one person, a real terrorist, can go dump chlorine gas into the air conditioning system of a high-rise building, kill 10,000 people. And I'm not letting secrets out here. This is all well known. One or two operatives can burn down 5 or 6 skyscrapers with timers. All you do is truck gasoline up into them. A 20-person team could have Austin looking like World War III in 1 hour. Okay? The Russians have these systems. The Chinese, admittedly, have more than 20,000, that's come out in congressional reports, stay-behind operatives. They're running grocery stores. They're working at factories. I mean, they've got saboteurs everywhere. And the United States and private corporations, they have saboteurs everywhere. Now, the U.S. has saboteurs inside the U.S. They've got 5,000 Iraqis they brought in and sheep-dipped. That came out in the LA Times in 2003. They've also got the other system, InfraGard, which are over 100,000 executives who have shoot-to-kill orders of their employees if they don't follow orders during martial law. And you've got all these guys on power trips with their gun in their desk and their little FBI security card. And if a lot of these idiots, if they're told blow up the chemical plant, they'll do it. The point is they put in reportedly a couple thousand operatives, and they just started randomly blowing things up, killing thousands of civilians, total bedlam, a special forces destabilization operation, so that Gaddafi's forces started running in every direction trying to fight him. Then they made their way towards government buildings and towards the gold hoard under the Gaddafi ministerial buildings. They want that 144 tons of gold to give it to the rebels, so they can then later set up a new Al-Qaeda base, and then the public will remember in 2 to 5 years that it was all staged, and we'll have to go into Tripoli again. Again, they don't want an industrialized first world nation. So they want to get the civil war going and then have NATO sit back, just controlling Tripoli and some of the key ports and oil production facilities. We've heard at least 8 times that Gaddafi's been killed or captured, or his sons have, or that he fled the country. And Obama said this will not weeks. So now 4.5 months is days, not weeks, okay? And again, it's not a war. It's a kinetic action. They talk to you like you're complete and utter morons. They come out and tell you the Constitution is over and a bad thing. CNN last night was saying there's no such thing as a war powers anymore. Congress can't get that power back. It now resides with the president. I mean, they're just stating high treason everywhere. This isn't a war. We don't need Congress. We don't need Congress for war, taxes. I mean, they're just in your face. And then they said all his sons are captured and killed, 100%. Now, and it is confirmed that U.S., British, and other NATO forces are in there commanding the rebels and basically leading assaults. So in the next few months, you'll hear about lots of troop transport planes that crash in the U.S., in Europe, and they'll just tack the numbers of dead onto that, even though their bodies will already be sitting on ice in morgues at military bases. And we've confirmed that a lot of U.S. troops have already died over there. It's now more than 50 in the last 4.5 months of the non-war. But again, you'll just be told later that they died in automobile accidents and plane crashes. I've talked directly to the people at the military bases. What's the big issue? Why did they do this? Because even if they can't fully take Tripoli, NATO, and their al-Qaeda forces, and these are admitted al-Qaeda, here's the LA Times on it. Libyan rebels story shows links to Taliban, al-Qaeda, NATO. Oh, really? Wow. I mean, it's admitted that all the leaders of the rebel groups are al-Qaeda and being shipped in. By the way, it's official. I've got an article. Sharia law is to be put into place there. Women, you're going to start wearing the burqas. Same thing in Egypt, same thing in Iraq. They put the Muslim extremist in everywhere. That's who the West wants in power. That's why they created al-Qaeda. Then they can also then use that threat to take our liberties. See, the globalists are attacking America and the Muslims. But we're thinking, oh, America's fighting Muslims. You've got to get into the globalist mindset of total war against all institutions and civilization and the nation state. They want to wreck societies. So here's what's going to happen. Gaddafi will either be captured or killed soon, or they are going to send in U.S., British, and other troops under the umbrella of NATO and the UN, and the further scorched earth terror operations and slaughter meant to scare the population into submission. NATO admittedly is dropping these giant sonic bombs that shake the ground and just cause, you know, ear-splitting noises. Just like at Waco, playing the sounds of dead and dying rabbits with monks chanting. It's psychological. Just so everybody's being attacked from every side, they don't know what's going on. Then they announce, yes, we've got Gaddafi, we've got his sons, we've won. Then the rebels call for the foreign occupiers. They're the official government, we're told. And this can happen anywhere. They can have uprisings, and then the UN and the globalists recognize it. You're going to end up in the future having uprisings in the Southwest of illegals that have been taught this is Mexico, and you're going to see our government recognize them and break off part of the Southwest to be part of an autonomous UN-run enclave. That's on the board in the North American Union SPP plans. They merge the 3 countries, Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, but then break up separate ethnic enclaves. You're going to see now what we talked about in September, October, the U.S. forces going in. If Gaddafi would have fully repelled this attack, they would have still gone in. But now, because it looks like, from what I've seen, that it's a fluid situation, Gaddafi has not had a very strong response to this. The hoax is running that he's already been defeated. That hasn't happened. But the fact that they've been able to insert these special forces, they've got Apaches in there attacking any of his troops that try to repulse the al-Qaeda heroes, according to our media, that they're just going to continue burning the city until everything's destroyed. And then that'll make the banks even happier, because then they can come in and obviously loan them more fiat currency and make them debt slaves. You are seeing the Nobel Peace Laureate bring absolute death and destruction and put Al-Qaeda in. And then, of course, they're going to then use Libya as a base to start attacking Europe and the United States, and then that'll be used to take our freedoms.